Hi, I'm Ruben Saltzman with Structure Tech Home Inspections, and today I have an update on my must-have tool list for homeowners, and this one comes from you, the readers. That's right, I received a bunch of feedback from a lot of people at the end of my last post on all of my suggestions for must-have tools for homeowners. I said, did I miss anything? If I did, chime in with your own suggestions. And man, I didn't think I'd get nearly this many suggestions. I guess there was a lot of stuff that I missed. So I'm going to go through all of your suggestions along with some of my own commentary on all of these extra tools. So let's start off. One of the more popular ones that people said, I got this repeated a few times, was a channel lock pliers. Now, as I discussed during my last video, channel lock is a brand name. And there's a lot of brand names where there's a generic term for it. The generic term for a channel lock pliers is a tongue and groove pliers. This particular brand of tongue and groove is made by Crescent. But the way it works is you open it up, you slide it, and then you get it to the right size, and it gives you lots of leverage. I agree. This is a good recommendation. Every household ought to have a tongue and groove or channel lock pliers, but I got to share my own 2 cents on this. I bought this pliers. We'll say pliers. I bought this set of pliers probably 20 years ago. Home Depot sold this. I think it was a Home Depot exclusive. It was made by Rigid, and it's the Robo Grip 2. Now, I did some Googling, and I don't think you can buy a Robo Grip 2 anymore. Now it's just the Robo Grip. And it seems cheesy. It seems like one of those as seen on TV type of tools where, okay, yeah, you know, it self-adjusts and you know, you don't need to adjust the channel. Cheesy, don't need one of those. But got this like 20 years ago, and I still love it. I will reach for this before any other pliers on my shelf. I mean, I'll go to this before I use my vice grips. This is a fantastic set of pliers. Let me just, I'm picking up the other pliers here. I'll just kind of show you how it works. You grab on to whatever it is you want, and it auto adjusts, and it's like it locks it in place, and that ain't going anywhere. So I do love the Robo Grip. I would prefer to have a set of Robo Grips than channel lock pliers. All right, that's just me. Next, I just mentioned it, is a pair of vice grips, also known as a locking pliers. Vice grips, these are the true vice grip. I think that's a brand name, but they don't have the little R on there. So I don't know if it's a registered trademark or not, but the way these work is you get it, you turn this little dial on the bottom, you get it to where you want it, and you give it a good squeeze, and it locks in place. So it can kind of act like a vice where it really holds something there, and then you can just walk away. Or if you got stripped nuts, really good for grabbing those. You can really torque down on stuff with this. You can even grab on the bolts with these. You can grab on the end of bolts and turn them. Gives you such good gripping power. So yeah, I agree. Every household ought to have a vice grips. Next, let's see. This is another common one I got. Had a number of people say that I didn't have anything on my list for cutting. And some people suggested hand saws, wood saws, maybe a back saw, perhaps a hacksaw. Had a few people recommend a hacksaw. And when it comes to the saw department, you know, I'd say if you're just gonna have one saw, the saw to replace all other saws, the most versatile saw, is gonna be a reciprocating saw. Now, the trade name for that, the one everybody calls it, is a Sawzall. It's going to look like this. So this is a battery-powered Sawzall, and I absolutely love this thing. You pull the trigger, and it does that. And this will cut through anything. It is an extremely versatile tool. You get different blades on the end, and you can go through metal and wood and prune. You can use it out in the yard. You get a pruning blade, dude. This is a ninja tip for you. Get a pruning blade for your Sawzall or your reciprocating saw and go to town. I ended up clearing out a huge like forest of buckthorn in my backyard, and I used my Sawzall with a pruning blade for almost everything. Barely had to break out my chainsaw. I mean, those pruning blades are awesome. And you don't need a monster Sawzall like that. You could go with something smaller. I've also got the Hacksaw. This is like the one-handed version of it. It takes a cute little 12-volt battery, and this would be compatible with the 12-volt drill that I shared in my last post. It's cuter, you know, it's little, it gets the job done, but I don't use it all that often. I really like using my Sawzall. This thing's okay. It's okay, but that would replace all of these other saws. It doesn't do the most fantastic job of a lot of other things, but it will take the place of pretty much everything else. So get yourself a Sawzall. Let's see, what else do we have here? A wet dry vac. Every house needs a wet dry vac. And notice I'm using the non-generic term, the brand name term. I'm using the generic term. The brand name is shop vac. A lot of people know their wet dry vacs as a shop vac. That's a brand name. This one happens to be made by Husky. I've also got, this is a little one. This is more of kind of my inside wet dry vac. It's a 4-gallon deal. I've got a 16-gallon jobby in my garage for big messes. Every house needs one of these. And just a couple little tips for you, as long as I'm going to talk about wet dry vacs. One of them is, if you're going to suck up drywall dust, you need some type of special filter. I've got, here's a filter for my other vacuum, I think, or maybe it's this one. It's a fine filter. If you don't have one of these and you're sucking up a bunch of drywall dust, that dust can make its way through your filter, your traditional filter, and it can get inside the motor and it can ruin it. So if you're sucking up drywall dust, get a special filter. And also, there's this aftermarket filter that I was in love with for the longest time. If you look inside here, you've got this steel reinforcement mesh. So when you're cleaning out your filter, you know, you're banging it on the side of the garbage can or the inside of a dumpster or whatever you're hitting it on, it doesn't collapse the filter. It stays really rigid. I love this thing. And the way it stays in place is it's just friction fit. It fits the inside filter holder, and you just push it into place really tightly, and it stays there really well. And you don't need to mess with the little nut on the bottom. I thought it was great for many years until one year my wet dry vac had been sitting in my negative 20-degree garage. I brought it in to clean up this big mess, and it turns out this had shrunk in the cold and it had fallen off and it was no longer secured. So I'm doing all this vacuuming, sucking up all this mess, and everything's bypassing my filter, going right into the motor, and I completely destroyed my wet dry vac because I was using this filter. So this filter is great when it's warm outside. If it gets really cold, it might fall off and then you ruin your wet dry vac. So there's a word of caution to you. Next, had someone suggest a painter's multi-tool. It looks like a putty knife, and it's got all these little different cuts in the metal. You've got the traditional putty knife for scraping. You've got a sharp end here. You've got a curved scraper, another curved scraper. These are all kind of sharp edges. You've got this little scoop here, which is good for cleaning brushes. You've got a bottle opener, of course. You've got a nail puller here, all these different little things. And it's really stiff. So you can use it for prying things too. And then on the end, I've many times used this for kind of hitting things that need to be hit. And then, like, even if you're in a total jam, I don't think I've ever used it for this, but if you're in a total jam, it's even got a hex bottom where you could install a bit, and then you could use it like a screwdriver and you could turn it. I've never done that, thankfully. I've never had to. Next, we've got a putty knife. Very functional tool. This is a putty knife. This is a flex putty knife. You know, it's super thin, super flexible. You can use it for putty, of course, and applying stuff and maybe small drywall patches, filling nail holes, things like that. It'll certainly do all those things, but really, for me, I use it more for cutting, for things that don't really need a sharp edge. It's a very thin blade, and also for pulling back woodwork. I mean, if I want to get behind trim, anything like that, this does a really good job of slipping in behind stuff, even breaking a paint seal on things. Very functional tool. I use this all the time. And you couple this with your painter's multi-tool, you put these two together, and it makes for a fantastic prying tool, especially if you want to get trim apart. I would much sooner use tools like this than I would a pry bar to take trim off. And a pry bar was something else that somebody else had suggested I add to the list. Maybe you could add a pry bar to the list. I've got a bunch of pry bars, but unless I'm doing demolition work, like construction, I don't have much of a need for a pry bar. So I don't know why you'd need one of those. Something that is extremely handy to have is a stud finder. And here's the electronic version of it. It's for finding studs in a wall. If you're going to be fastening stuff to a wall, you need to know where those studs are. This is more reliable than simply knocking on a wall and listening for a change in tone. But something I was recently introduced to is the Stud Buddy. Now, this is nothing new. I've got this old magnetic stud finder in my tool drawer. It's got to be 80 years old, but this is a newer version of it. And all this is, these are magnets. It's a long, skinny magnet. It's got some plastic on the outside of it, and you wave this around on your wall. You just kind of go in a circle until it finds one of the drywall screws, and it will grab that drywall screw aggressively. I mean, say they're magnetic. It grabs that drywall screw aggressively, and then you find the next stud and you do the same thing, and then you have these two things just stuck on your wall, and you don't need to mark your wall. These just indicate where the studs are, and then you do your thing and you move it to the next stud. And the beauty is that there's no batteries. These will never be dead on you. You don't need to put any marks in your wall. It's just as accurate as using the electronic stud finder as far as I'm concerned. So I love these. I would get these before I would get another stud finder. I grew up using electronic stud finders. Didn't use the magnetic ones, but now I'm going backwards. I'm going to magnetic. Next one, a level. Yeah, fair enough. Everybody needs a level. I think I probably use my 2-foot level more often than any other one, but now, man, I got this. I don't know where I heard about this. I think it was in the Family Handyman's magazine, and it's called the, I don't even know what it's called. It's by Capro Industries. I'm doing a horrible job of selling this. It's like a picture hanging level, and it's got markings on the outside here where it starts at 0 in the middle, and so you can find the dead center of something, and then it's got measurements going up, and then we flip it over, it's got your traditional measurements going all the way across, and it goes, and then we have millimeters and centimeters on another side, and then it's got these little slides. So if you're hanging a picture and you know the two places where you want it, you put this up against your wall, mark it, and then take it down. I use this more than anything else now. Love this ruler. It was again something I read about in a magazine. The editors liked it, and I love it. Capro Industries it was. Next, PPE, personal protective equipment. How could I have forgotten about this? You need to keep yourself safe. Of course, you need goggles. Can't tell you how many times I've had stuff go into my eyes because I was being an idiot and I wasn't wearing some cool goggles like this. So get yourself some safety glasses, goggles, whatever. These are not goggles. These are safety glasses. I know. Don't write in. But get yourself some eye protection. Get yourself some hearing protection. You're using power tools, doing anything loud, protect your ears. You don't get them back. You can get cheap little plugs like this, like they hand out at rock concerts. I think that's where I got these. These will do the job, but if you're doing anything serious, I mean, if you're gonna be outside, if you're gonna be mowing the lawn, using your snow blower, or leaf blower, anything for any serious period of time, do yourself a favor and get some ear protection with tunes built in. These are the Ion headphones. I like these. They've got AM/FM radio, and it's got Bluetooth built in, so you connect to your phone. It's got great hearing protection, and you get to listen to your tunes. Love these things. Can't live without them. More on PPE. Get yourself some dust masks for obvious reasons. It's going to look like, you know, what everybody was wearing during COVID, pretty much. But also, I think more importantly, get yourself a respirator, and it's going to look like this. And I am not joking about this. I am a risk taker. I will do all kinds of crazy stuff, but when I'm working with any kind of chemicals, I mean, if I'm working with bleach, if I'm using any type of things that just smell funky, where I think, am I going to get a buzz if I'm around this material for too long? Anytime around that stuff, I pull out my respirator. Garden chemicals, you better believe I'm wearing one of these. Anytime I'm spraying anything with glyphosate or whatever, one of these respirators. They're comfortable and they filter out all kinds of gases. You need one of these. They're like 20 bucks. Every homeowner ought to own one of those, even if you're not doing construction projects. I mean, even if you're just using bleach to clean stuff, it's a good idea to wear those. And then, of course, gloves. You need some safety gloves, work gloves. I can't tell you how many times I've bashed my knuckles and thought, why wasn't I wearing gloves? Should have been wearing them. Now this isn't so much a tool, this is just something that maybe belongs in your workshop, is zip ties or cable ties. This is a variety pack, and I keep these in stock at my house. I keep them in my garage and my basement. So many reasons to have cable ties in varying lengths. The black ones, those are for outdoor use. They are UV resistant. It's nice to have both. Next, a step ladder. Now, I already talked about a Little Giant ladder. Huge fan of those. If you own a Little Giant ladder, you don't need a step ladder. You can get away with just the one ladder, but I'll tell you, it is nice to have some little ladders, more for indoor use. I keep a cute little 2-step ladder in my kitchen pantry. This thing's great. That's handy. And then also, I keep a 3-step ladder, and I love this. This might be one of my favorite tools. It's a 3-step ladder. It's made by Gorilla Ladders. It weighs 8 pounds. So light, so handy, and it's got this huge standing surface. And it's also a Home Depot exclusive. You can only get that ladder at Home Depot, unfortunately. Okay, someone else suggested pliers, just traditional pliers. I think if you've got vice grips and channel lock, you have no need for a traditional set of pliers, but someone suggested it, so there they are. Someone else said WD-40. Of course, everybody needs WD-40. Do you like that old can? Look how old school this is. This has got to be like 40 years old. Okay, there's some WD-40. Duct tape. Yes, of course, everybody needs duct tape. At least one roll. Now, someone suggested an outlet tester, just a plug-in outlet tester. Maybe. I don't know. If you're going to be rewiring electrical outlets and you want to make sure that you're doing the work right, okay, I could see it. If you want to make sure that you have power to an outlet, I guess you could do it. You could also just plug in a radio. You could do that. I'm not sure if you need one of these, but maybe. I mean, for a home inspector, it's an invaluable tool. We need those all day. For general electrical or general homeowner stuff, maybe. Another person suggested a voltage detector. And again, this is only if you're getting into electrical work would you need a voltage detector, also known as a voltage sniffer. That's what I call them. Here's an example of one. This is the only one that I would buy. This is made by Fluke, and this is the Volt Alert 2AC. It's the only one I would get. It's got no on or off button. It's just on all the time. And it's got this little test button here. You press that, the light turns on, tells you that you have battery, and it senses voltage. Don't go using one of these until you know how to use it. I've got another video I think is very helpful talking about all the false positives that you can get using these. So check that out before you ever try using a voltage sniffer, because you need to know what you're doing with your tools. So maybe add that to your arsenal, maybe not, I'm not sure. Carpenter's pencil, of course. Who could possibly argue with that? Everybody needs a carpenter's pencil. And then someone else suggested screws. They said drywall screws. I'll do you one better. Instead of drywall screws, just multi-purpose screws for getting the job done on whatever you're trying to do, I'll say get construction screws. It's a more versatile screw. This one, I happen to buy the ones made by Spax, S-P-A-X. I like their screws. They're great because they have a thicker shaft all the way through, and on the head, it's a Phillips head, but it'll also accept a number 2 square bit, which is superior to Phillips in just about every way. Love the square drive. You don't have slip out with those. And then on the end, you probably can't see it in the video here, but it's slightly serrated on the end, which helps to not need pre-drilling. And these things are good for going into wood, metal, plastic, concrete, whatever. It is a fantastic multi-purpose bit. Again, screw. Again, it's called a construction screw. So, need one of those. You need those in varying lengths and sizes, of course. And let me look around. Did I think that's it. I think I covered all of the extra listener or reader suggestions. Other than, wait, you know what? Hold on. I've got a few other little ones here. Someone also said a plunger. Of course, everybody needs a plunger. Aspirin, a first aid kit, a sanding block. These are things I'm not holding up here. Super glue, electrical tape, and finally a bottle opener. Someone suggested a bottle opener. Now, if you've got all these other tools, you know, like especially if you got the painter's putty tool, painter's multi-tool, you already have a bottle opener built in. And if you have a good wedding ring, or any ring for that matter that's not going to scratch, this one is made of tungsten carbide, you have a built-in bottle opener. Here, let me show you how it works. Just line the ring up here, grab it, pop it off. That's it. So yeah, as long as you got a ring on your finger, you already have the bottle opener. But if you don't like doing that, sure, by all means, get a bottle opener too to complete the list. Okay, that was your suggestions along with my commentary on all of the rest of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ruben Saltzman with Structure Tech Home Inspections. Take care.